Today we are talking about the top 15 quarterbacks in the 2025 NFL Draft. How I grade these players is on a 1 to 100 scale, and it is also based on tiers. I have it based on the tiers that you see, but it's also based on that numerical scale. They all work together, but 75 plus is going to be that QB1, 75 to 70 is going to be that QB2, 70 to 64 QB3, and 64 and below is going to be that practice squad / guys who might not be able to be on a 53. The way I'd be able to grade these players is arm strength. It's going to be baseline velocity and, basically the consistency of said velocity processing. Do you make the right decisions? Short accuracy, medium accuracy, deep accuracy. Basically, do you throw a catchable ball at these different layers? Certain players do not have that capability. Placement is going to be more the precision. Remember, precision versus accuracy, big difference. Do you throw in stride? Do you not? Those are going to be kind of big factors when the windows close in the NFL. Mobility, definitely kind of a factor for a lot of different systems, but not necessarily the end-all be-all. Playmaking's pretty damn huge. I actually ended up reweighting playmaking to be able to make it a lot more translatable, and honestly, I think it ended up making the list far more comfortable with what I think the list should be. Timing basically showing, hey, are you actually taking way too long to throw the ball? Are you feeling pressure the right way? And then pocket IQ. Also, do you feel pressure the right way? Do you move up and down? But there are other factors like height, weight, age that I do put into, as well as health into it factor. But let's get into this with Seth Hennigan. You guys will be getting a grade per player, but also you get a scouting report game per player. So for Seth Hennigan, let's talk about his game versus Navy. And I don't write these notes so that you guys end up having the super concise report. This is watching the game with me. You're sitting next to me. We're turning on the game in all 22. Let's talk about it. And for Seth Hennigan, I'm just going to be honest, he was a little bit unnotable, but it starts out the game with a high delivery on the run when he was throwing a crossing route. He flashed some nice mobility. He forced a hitch route, which I hate when quarterbacks throw hitch routes. You will see processing is a D-. There is a reason for that. He ends up making a lot of forced throws, even versus teams where not necessarily the exact prototypical NFL defense, but I digress. Nice delivery on a hitch that ended up turning to an in, so basically a curl in. Velocity is overall mediocre. Placement has been very spotty. He ended up dirting an RPO, dirting meaning you throw it into the ground when he was not trying to. He has been under zero pressure, so, again, you didn't even get to see him under pressure. But he had a nice mid-range throw, good use of his legs to get a first down. He forced a ball into an end zone for a near interception. Hate to say this, but he is not remotely an NFL quarterback. So bottom line, Seth Hennigan, got to meet him in Mobile. Seems like a really nice guy, and I got to see him at the Frisco Bowl. He has some splash plays to him, but at the end of the day, on a consistent basis, I just don't see it. And it's pretty clear everybody pretty much has him 15 or 16 in the class. This is going to be one where it's not necessarily up for much debate. I will not be doing comparisons for every single player. If I really believe it, that's when you know the comparison is legit. Brady Cook is next. Brady Cook has a lot of awesome traits to him, but I think the biggest issue is that arm. We'll talk about his game versus South Carolina. He's a pretty twitchy athlete off the bat. Clean delivery under pressure when he's on the move to a flat route. Clean delivery over the middle, slightly low, but it was a nice layer. You will see consistently that his passes just died way too quickly. He went through 3 progressions to end up finding an open wide receiver. The ball dies too quickly. He consistently throws short because he's not putting enough weight on his back leg, but it also ended up seeming like his arm just doesn't have that necessary strength that you are trying to go for. Regardless, he good job escaping pressure and breaking sack attempts and keeping his eyes downfield for a big gain. He needs to watch his placement. He threw inside on a quick out route, which in the NFL, if you throw inside when your receiver is going out, it's a good chance the wide or the corner is going to be able to lurk that. Ball velocity is not ideal, leading to these under and behind throws. I think Brady believes he has better arm velocity than he has, and he ended up dirting a pass that while he was rolling to the right. Genuinely believe his arm is garbage. There you go. There's the quote of the day. The way he has to float it 30 yards says everything about his arm. He nearly threw an interception in the end zone on an end zone shot. Again, inside on a quick out. Awful dirted ball while rolling right to the flat. Can overextend plays at times. Leaning into his bullet passes, which I mean, if you understand quarterback mechanics, which I'm no expert, but I end up watching a lot of guys. First Down Academy on Instagram is actually really, really good at this as well. But when you start leaning, like you start pulling your arm up, first off, that also puts a lot of stress on your shoulder, so more injury concern. But it also keeps your body less stable, which leads to more inaccuracy. I digress. He fumbled when no one was touching him. Actually, a couple guys end up fumbling with literally nobody touching them. You can see how the offensive coordinator knows how poor his decision making is in the red zone based on the quantity of runs that they go with and how the worst results are always on pass plays. A quality fade shot for a touchdown. That was to Luther Burden. Overall, really liked how he performed when scripted on the first drive or two. Then he really fell off and has a big limitation with his arm. But the mobility brings an upside to him in certain systems with a solid enough processor that he could stick around the 53-man roster or practice squad if need be. I just love the playmaking. I mean, it's certainly there. We've seen it from years in the past, but I mean, that arm velocity is going to be tough to deal with, but the playmaking really is a solid foundation. Let's talk about Riley Leonard next, and we'll talk about his game versus Texas A&M. I think that's probably the best one, like that shows Riley Leonard at his best. I hate to say it, but regardless, Riley Leonard off the bat, he's panicked when the snap was bad, but he did find a check down. He forced a curl route, scrambled, and he overthrew his open target. It seems to handle pressure well enough to find safe targets, but the ball dies on its way to the running back. Throwing with anticipation, he did a nice job on a 15-yard curl. Ball ended up being behind when he was throwing over the middle. Again, not really good when the defender is tracing behind and you're throwing over the middle. Could end up being an interception. Does not seem to trust his arm more than his legs, especially when he should be trusting his arm. His deep ball dies 2 to 3 yards inside of the receiver. Cannot seem to throw a fade. Ball died again, and this time it was a touchdown that was missed. Missed deep deep in route. It was low and too far in front. Missed a flat route when he should have targeted the in route. Nice throw into a tight window on the outside, a bit behind on his out route, nearly picked on a forced curl route. You guys know that is like, certain people have like trigger words or trigger actions. For me, my trigger action is when a quarterback throws a curl or a hitch route when it's like pretty obviously not open. Forced an in/slant for a near pick 6. So Riley Leonard, I mean, there's more games I ended up tossing in there, but I think that was the perfect encapsulation. It was his first game as well with Notre Dame, and it still ended up holding up to everything. Riley just is an unimpressive quarterback. That's the unfortunate thing. But honestly, I think he gets more hate than what he should. Like, I don't think he's like genuinely complete ass. I do think that he could be like the 32nd best QB3, and that's not like a bad thing. Like, it could end up being like a really reliable option, and if he ends up going in the 5th round, it's like, okay, I get it. Good mobility, like somebody that I think could end up making, he has some high level traits like anticipation, but for me, I wasn't like over the moon about Riley Leonard, and it sucks because coming into the year, I actually thought much higher of him, so his grade ended up dropping, which is not great for me. Graham Mertz is next, and I mean, it sucks to see him get hurt so much, but I was actually pleasantly surprised with this. Let's talk about his game versus Tennessee where he ended up getting hurt. But honestly, I thought that the select plays in there honestly gave a good encapsulation of his talent better than pretty much anything else. He ended up starting out the game with really good placement on a slant route, good hitch route throw, good throw away when the play ended up breaking down. Has a long windup that could lead to poor placement. This is very true. When you end up having a very long throw motion and your mind doesn't actually account for it, that is when the placement can start to dip, which I thought it did with him. He does these little chihuahua tap steps. His footwork is not good. And it's so funny. Like the little dogs that are like, they have the shoes on and shit, and they're like, doop, 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 doop. That's him. I swear. It drives me a little bit nuts, but it is what it is. Good scramble for a first down. Nice delivery to the flat route. I fuck with a throw whenever I ended up getting excited, I ended up seeing it was Lagaway throwing it, but ended up being back in after being hurt. His placement on the flats have overall been great. Clean delivery to a deep hitch route, and then he ended up being hurt. Honestly, I do think that Graham Mertz is lost in the shuffle because ultimately he doesn't have any reason to ever start above DJ Lagaway, who looks like an absolute superstar. But this guy still, even in camp, was able to beat out Lagaway, and he has some really, really solid plays and really good throws. So I think Graham Mertz has that potential. I do like the fact that he ended up throwing the ball away when the play ended up, scrambling up, but it's pretty obvious this guy is, again, going to be in like the top. He's going to be like number 30 of the QB3s in the NFL. But again, you have that upside there, and I really do like that. Quinn Ewers is next. And again, you're going to see how close. I mean, this is a noticeable jump, a whole 1-point jump. But you're going to see how close all of these are. Like, these are very, very close. So I do want to put that out there. Let's talk about this game versus Georgia. Might as well. Some of these I do repeat from the last quarterback video I did because I don't think that the extra games I watched were any more representative. But let's talk about this game versus Georgia. He had a nice layer on a 10-yard hitch route. Honestly, did a really good job on the starting drive. He really is. He ended up throwing a very, very poor pass on a screen ball. I ended up saying really off on the screen ball. He ended up underthrowing the go route, which he's the worst deep throwing quarterback I swear I've ever seen for, what people think. Did not feel backside pressure, ended up fumbling. Sounds familiar. And like Ohio State kind of told him that one too, huh? Ended up missing a deep post, kept drifting backwards, leading to a near safety. Slow throw motion leads to an interception. Did not read the boundary corner sitting, and that ended up allowing for the lurk. Poor check down, ended up being injured, being put out, and then he ended up coming back in. Nice step up and throw over the middle. Nice touchdown throw that was layered. Horribly underthrown go ball that was bailed out by the wide receiver, forcing a lot of these short throws. Nice touchdown rip on an angle route. Missed a touchdown throw on a lob, but lobs have been off for him when throwing deep big time. Missed a read on a wide open tight end, but did check down for an open running back. Ended up getting dropped. Forced deep middle of the field shot into the linebacker's hands. Needs to bring it up. Potentially knocked off a little bit by the hit. Basically, he ended up trying to throw a little bit of a deep middle shot, and it might have been like deflected, but ended up hitting the linebacker in the hands. So needs to work a little bit more on that deep layering. I think that he has the layering aspect down pretty solid in the middle of the field, but maybe not the deep mid, which, again, you see deep accuracy, kind of makes sense. Consistently see him not seeing the middle right part of the field. A lot of guys ended up consistently getting open in that like middle right. So you think about like 5 to 15 yards in that right part of the field. That's honestly where I thought he has some of his best placement as well as a quarterback. And he ends up not being able to see it very well. I don't know what's up with that, because especially since his body is angled, I mean, he's a right-handed thrower. You'd think that he'd be able to see, like, even peripherally out to his, like, mid-right, but just doesn't happen. Bailed from a clean pocket, ended up throwing a turnover-worthy play. I ended up saying number 23 is a really good route runner. If I'm not mistaken, this is Jaden Blue. Lobbed a mid-right pass right into the defensive back's hands. There you go. Forced another ball for almost an interception. It looks to me like he doesn't handle late game pressure situations well, but when he is in rhythm, he is a high level passer. And that's the biggest thing. If you took away the negative it factor for Quinn, he's going to be like QB5 or QB4 in the class. It's just when push comes to shove, this guy is not consistent. And then in the biggest moments, he ends up just absolutely being unreliable, if not bad. And it sucks. I'm a big fan of Quinn Ewers, right? Like, I'm an Ohio State fan by trade. My family has Ohio State alums. And so I was rooting for Quinn Ewers from the get-go, right? Even above CJ Stroud. That didn't age well. But you know what? It was the first game of Quinn Ewers anyway. But I digress. Like, for Quinn Ewers, I think that he just consistently doesn't put himself in the right mental space to where he just needs to calm down and the game gets a little too fast for him and he just starts making worse and worse plays. And it feels very Matt Corral-y in the aspect where when Matt was on, he was on fire. But the moment shit started going downhill, really ended up spiraling down. So maybe that's going to be like a mental comp for Quinn Ewers. But again, I'm not one to force comps in there. If I do have a comp, I'll put it in there for you guys. Curtis Rourke's next. Curtis Rourke's a good player. A little bit on the older side, but shout out. I think he's Canadian as well, so shout out to him. I know his QB coach is on Instagram, another guy who's really instrumental in allowing me to understand some quarterback mechanics. So feel free to go follow him as well. He works with guys like Will Levis. I know it's not necessarily very encouraging, but Will Levis still, I mean, when you put toe to turf, it's a little bit different than, when you're working out on a practice field. But regardless, talk about his game versus Michigan. He needs to watch out for placement on rushed throws. He threw inside on a flat route that had an inside defender. You guys know what's up with that. That's an interception in the NFL. Potentially a pick six. If you underthrow a flat and it's behind, the defender's going to lurk that and just take it to the house. So I'm quite surprised. Well, they're lucky, honestly, that Will Johnson wasn't there, because that's probably going to be a pick six off the bat. But I digress. Great layering on a deep out route. Clean delivery to open receivers. Excellent placement on a goal line fade. Good ball velocity as well off his hand. So it just kind of like it flies off his hand in a good way. Again, C is adequate in the NFL. FYI. I know a lot of people don't like the C grades, but C is adequate. So it's like you really need to work on the D's. C's you can work on. B's are really solid assets. B pluses are great. And then the A's are phenomenal, right? So I really like to be able to reward players for having positive assets, which are positive aspects of their game, which that's why the B's are like it's good. It's good. So keep that in mind. Needs to watch out for these shorter out routes because he tends to lose placement when he rushes it. I do think his timing gets a little bit off on those to where, maybe he should be a little bit more in the zone and then end up throwing it with a little more anticipation, which is why I think he ends up rushing these passes a little too much. But back to it. Teardrop touchdown. I mean, it was beautiful. I posted it over on X. Feel free to go follow me over there. I post all 22 clips that do support my decisions. And so you guys can always do that. And if you guys want to, you could support me over at UnderDog Fantasy using the code HAILMARY. Get up to $1,000 in bonus cash, and you send me $60. Well, they send me $60. Full transparency. Great company, though. Clean delivery in stride on a deep in route. Did not feel the backside pressure, resulting in a fumble. Hospital ball. Not a fan of those. I think it was a seam shot as well. He can fit it into tight windows, especially over the middle. He ended up dirting a ball over the middle right after, but it technically was catchable. He just ended up not sitting back far enough on his back leg, causing a loss of velocity. When you end up leaning too far on your front leg, it ends up not being able, think about golfers, right? They sit on their back leg initially and then they transfer to their front. If a golfer has his weight all on his front leg when he goes for his swing, it's not going to transfer very well. So think about it that way, as if it does, if you guys are golfers, which, I mean, I'm not. I wish I were, but maybe one day we'll talk about it. Regardless, I ended up talking about that already. So we're back. Did not sit back far enough. Solid back shoulder on the fade. Would like a bit quicker with his timing. He's in rhythm when he makes good decisions. So where I said when he's in rhythm, he does make very good decisions. Interception on an RPO, ended up forcing it. It was a horrible decision. Ball is slightly behind on a skinny post. Starting to lose composure a little bit as the game goes on. Ended up bouncing back with a gorgeous layering to the mid-deep right. Some of these drops are absolutely horrible, so shout out to the receivers. He's not a great athlete overall. Overall, extremely big upside player with his arm, but lacks the playmaking outside of the structure of the offense. It really did feel like that. There's going to be another play that we're just about to talk about that I think it is kind of one of the more indicting things on their character and in terms of their game is when it breaks down and it's not going according to schedule, they don't necessarily make the most of it. But again, look at the difference between Quinn Ewers and Curtis Rourke. It's a half of a point. It's very, very minute. But let's continue on here with Kyle McCord, who I really, really like. And you guys are going to see the mobility is the sole reason why he's QB9. I think in certain systems where you're going to value that less, this could be completely different. But this is a holistic view at quarterbacks. Let's talk about his game versus NC State. Placed inside on a hitch with an inside defender. Off the bat, wasn't a huge fan of that, but ended up, you guys see the grade. It ends up getting a lot better. Almost has a processing lag for a microsecond after seeing the target that he wants to throw. Sniper shot on a fade. The wide receiver could not bring it in, though. A lot of quick, close throws. Ball velocity is absolutely there. Nice placement on a deep in. Not mobile at all. Nice throw under pressure. I said top. I'm like, the fuck is that? Nice throw under the pressure. Struggles with placement off platform. Good outside placement on the hitch the next time he threw it. So again, think about back to that first throw. You end up seeing him throw inside on that hitch with an inside defender, ended up having outside placement on the next time around. I love seeing guys do in-game adjustments like that. Hospital ball, but it was a good adjustment for a broken play. He ended up forcing an in route while under pressure. He threw a possible interception in the red zone due to forcing it in. Has not seen much processing a lot from the primary quick reads. So I think the offense honestly was very, very solid to where he didn't have to do too much in terms of the processing realm. But seeing McCord try to evade sacks is relatively comical because he's just not athletic. Another sniper seam shot, clean delivery over the middle, hospital ball. Ended up having a red zone his red zone decision making is overall very worrisome. He's a great overall thrower of the football, but I don't know about an NFL quarterback. I do think he just is very limited in that aspect. Like, as a thrower of the football, you're not going to get very much better in this class. I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know if anybody got the actual placement, accuracy, and strength down that Kyle McCord does, right? And it just is so much more of a mental game in the NFL than just a physical, which is why I am worried about McCord. But I do think that he is right there in that like guaranteed backup range. But if you need to elevate him, I think he can end up being a quality spot starter if need be. In the right system, I think he's a real quality spot starter. Dylan Gabriel's next, and you see the grade. I mean, it's just like, you can't be 5'11", 205. Like, it's tough. So let's talk about it nonetheless. I do think he is an on-sale version of Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson, and honestly, their games lend very heavily to that. Let's talk about his game versus Boise State. Good ball velocity and placement on a curl. Good rainbow ball. Seems to get panicked by pressure. He has yet to throw under pressure and has taken a sack or scrambled every time. Another beautiful deep shot for a touchdown. Pause. Placement short has been quite off. He needs to learn how to check down. He takes unnecessary sacks and scrambles into it rather than away from it. I just keep dying for him to take a check down. When identifying the blitz, he remained calm and threw a hot route for a touchdown. So he finally ended up learning mid-game, which is good, but again, took him a very long time to do it. Just wish he was more on a regular, less obvious base. Okay, I just wish he ended up checking down on a more less obvious. It was so blatantly obvious he should check down. That's why he ended up doing it. Basically, what I was trying to say there is, hey, learn how to do it when it isn't unbelievably obvious that you should be doing it. And so that was a little bit of an issue I had right there. Ended up fumbling. A couple of deep misses as well, as much as I think he does a good job with the deep shots from time to time. Pause. He ends up being a little inconsistent there. Much less impressive overall, but a nice foundation to see him grow upon. Just again, he's small, has really good deep passes, he has the experience, he has the mobility. I just want to see him know when not to play hero ball. And I think as the season went on for Oregon, it just got worse and worse and worse. So a little bit unfortunate there. Max Brosmer is next. This guy has the potential to be the best quarterback in the entire class. So let's talk about it. Talk about his game versus Penn State. I'm not a fan of his mechanics off the bat. He's leaning to slightly behind, or leading to slightly behind skinny post ball. Oh, I'm tripping balls. So his mechanics end up leading him to throw behind on a skinny post. So basically, again, leaning, having his throw motion's wonky as hell. We'll talk about that in a second. He definitely has some zip, but the mechanics are awful. Decision making has been solid. The placement has just been wonky due to his garbage mechanics. Crazy thread between 3 defenders. Interception due to poor placement. If he led the receiver better, it would have been a huge throw. So this was a wide receiver. He's throwing with anticipation, right? There's a defender here. The wide receiver is going behind him, and he ends up throwing the ball, like correctly so. The wide receiver was going to be gaining ground, but he threw the ball way too far behind so that the defender was pretty much right there to get the interception. It was the right decision, just the wrong throw, if that makes any sense. So another beautiful layer pass. His best throws are low-key back foot and falling away from the throw. This is very true. When it comes to throwing down the field on the left side, he has a tendency to pretty much just go on his back foot and yeet it, and it works. I don't know why, but it works, and it worked very consistently. He He ended up doing a jump pass to Lair, and he ended up overshooting his player. So, like, again, when you do a jump pass, you kind of throw mechanics out the window. Ended up overshooting his wide receiver to the point where they couldn't catch it, and that could have ended up being an interception. Again, you gotta be a little bit more reserved with your playmaking, and that's why his playmaking's an F. I don't think that, when everything breaks down and he needs to do things on his own accord, that he ends up doing it well. He tends to actually put it more in harm's way, but I think he has the potential to do better than that. His pocket presence has been very solid so far. He fumbled with no one touching him. There's the second one. I ended up having it earlier, but he's the guy who also fumbled. Awful hospital ball that was ended up being caught by the wide receiver. Shout out to Dan Jackson on that one. It was a seam shot. The high-level throws are just insane. He does throw with anticipation. The wide receiver ended up giving up early in the red zone, and that was actually the last play of the game, too. He ended up throwing, I think it was a skinny post behind a defender, and the wide receiver just slowed up, and he didn't even think the ball was coming his way. And I honestly think that it would have ended up being a touchdown if he ended up continuing to go at the rate that he was. So I thought that was a good play. He has the highest ceiling of all the day 3 quarterbacks with no doubt in mind. So really, really, really high upside with Brosmer, but a very dirt low floor. Hence why I'm sending him to a couple of the guys who I have a lot of faith in to be able to develop someone like that. This is going to ruffle some feathers, but Jackson Dart took a massive jump up if you guys look at where he was last time. And let's look why. I ended up looking at his game versus Georgia. So this was a game versus high-level talent. It didn't have a high amount of turnover-worthy plays or big-time throws. Like, I could have ended up looking at a couple of the games that had like 7 big-time throws. And to be fair, I've watched a notable amount of games for Jackson Dart. But I try my best to avoid the games where he's just like solely dicing it up. Because, again, like if you look at it versus a poor defense and you're just dicing it up, cool. But like I want to see why you struggle and how you bounce back from it. But also versus Georgia, I thought it was a very balanced game. So I wanted to see how he performed in that. He felt the pocket collapsing too early. Would have wanted a little bit more pocket manipulation. His bad start in terms of processing, he ended up taking 2 sacks. Random fling into the defense. He ended up being hurt, ended up coming back in. So that was basically, he ended up taking a hit, like a big hit, and ended up just like lobbing it into the defender. So it was really bad. Ended up coming back, ended up having good placement on a quick out route. Weird elongated throw motion leading to a high pass. Just throws a ton of checkdowns. His seam shot was out of reach. Did not make a tight window throw on his second read. Or he did not make a tight window throw on his second read. Another missed tight window throw. He seems to have good placement solely when players are open. That's a big thing for me. Like, it's good to be able to, do the backyard passing and throw perfectly, which I think he does. But it was when the players were covered that I thought he had some of the biggest issues with placement overall. He has some good throws between the hashes in the mid to deep range. Ball velocity overall is still not that great. Got very lucky. A defensive back took his eyes away from him as he began to throw in the red zone. It would have ended up being an interception. Dirted a ball over the middle. Horribly thrown ball behind the wide receiver. Overall, just not impressed. This guy's getting first round, even top 10 hype. I don't see it. I feel like I'm back talking about Desmond Ridder, not saying that that's Jackson Dart. I think that Jackson Dart's far more precise than Desmond Ridder, but it just feels like I'm back again, not believing in a quarterback and everyone else is. And it does bother me a little bit. I wish I could see it the way that you guys do. And this is something where I really do hope that I'm wrong in this situation. I always say that I'd rather be wrong about a player being someone that I don't like, because good football is better than being right. Like, it's also a learning lesson, so we can end up learning from it. I hope that you guys are right. I just don't see it with Jackson Dart. I don't. And if you do see, he's the same grade as Brosmer. So I'll just put that there. Tyler Shuck is next. He's in my top 5. I did not expect that, if I'm going to be honest. But Tyler Shuck's an interesting one. Let's talk about his game versus Clemson. Also, he is old. He also is brittle, hence the -4 injury, or -4 it factor. His placement is slightly behind on a 10-yard out route. He whiffed on a forced seam route as well. His swing pass was way too early, so he ended up just throwing it way too early to the running back. Nice step up in delivery on a deep hitch route. Very limited athlete overall. He nearly threaded a perfect pass in the red zone. He's not that limited of an athlete, but it's not a plus. So there you go. C is adequate. throw under pressure with anticipation, but the ball was not placed that well. Nice spot on a slant route, overshot a drag route with a sidearm throw. He tries to throw with anticipation at the very minimum, continues to overthrow deep passes, has a nice quick release on deep passes. So that's a positive. He ended up dirting his speed out, so the one that's like a rounded out. If you guys play college football 25, you guys know what that means. Loses a lot of placement ability when he does his bullshit sidearm. I think that he just tries to be fancy sometimes and like just does the sidearm slot, and the placement just ends up dying off. He overextends plays at points rather than taking what is there. Ended up saying that I love Ja'Cory Brooks. I'm going to reinforce that as much as I can. I don't understand why he's getting 0 love. He had a good throw with anticipation on a hitch route, good ball velocity. Overall, I get the hype. The consistency is just not really there. So, like Shuck, I really do think that, again, he's older. He should have a little bit more consistency that he does. He is kind of built like glass, multiple season-ending injuries, but the arm is there, and the big plays could definitely be there if he ends up continuing to develop his anticipation ability. But when you don't place the ball well with anticipation, that's not a good sign in the NFL. But I do think in a very weak quarterback class, again, you see what the grade is. It's 2 points higher than Quinn Ewers. Like let's be real. That's from quarterback 11 to this. It's 2 points. So it's a very tight group here. But Jalen Milroe is my QB4. You guys are probably wondering, like, man, this guy think Jalen Milroe is not a top 15 quarterback? No, I think he's a top 5 quarterback in this class. So let's talk about the game versus Tennessee. Yeah, I mean, this game pissed me the fuck off when it came to Jalen Milroe. And honestly, if you look at these, look at the grades, I think that you guys will agree that the majority of it is pretty spot on. You might say the playmaking's off, but the playmaking does involve the arm as well. And I don't think he's a very big playmaker with his arm. So that's going to be a big reason why. But let's talk about his game versus Tennessee, the game that literally made me lose my mind. Good extension, but he ended up missing a comeback route on the scramble. He missed a flat route to the left. Really bad miss behind while rolling the right and throwing deep right. There's been 1,000 penalties on the next drive alone. Ended up having a bad miss on an open stop route deeper to the deeper left. Awful throw in the middle of the field on the run after a nice evasion. Ended up throwing an interception. Accuracy short right has been quite solid. Overshot a fade route by a pretty large margin. He overthrew a wide open player. The decisions have been fine. The throws have just been horrible. That's perfectly describing Jalen Milroe. Another overthrow. Stop it. I wrote that in all caps as well. Did not feel backside pressure. Red zone IQ just drops when it comes to forcing reads. Nice delivery on a crosser over the middle, finally. I'm genuinely embarrassed for him with the placement. This game has been the worst I've ever seen from a quarterback considered in the first 2 rounds at the time that I was grading this game. Interception to end the game is icing on the top. This game displayed how far he has to grow to remotely be an NFL quarterback. But again, when you look at the foundation he brings and the high upside that he has and the locker room presence, everybody loves this kid. I genuinely think this guy has the potential, as he continues to work on his arm, to be someone who's extremely effective. And even early on, because of that mobility and because of the fact that there are areas of the field that he feels comfortable targeting. Now, do I think he should ever start? Yes. But do I think he should start this year? No. But do I think that the world will end if you start him this year? Well, no, because if it works out well, that's a good sign. If it doesn't, then it just kind of allows you to see how far he has to grow. So I do think Jalen Milroe is just under that spot starter territory. Again, 70 is when I hit that quarterback 3 territory, that quarterback 2 territory. This is just right there because I do think that the placement was that egregious. Let's talk about Will Howard next. So Will Howard is my number 3 quarterback, very close to my number 2 by a quarter of a point. This is going to be another small tier jump here. But let's talk about his game versus Texas. Great layer off the bat to Carnell Tate. Solid deep pass, slightly overthrown, but there was an underneath defender that was coming to assist. So basically, I was saying, it was a solid purposeful overthrow, right? You don't want to potentially underthrow it when there's an underneath defender that's coming. Nice timing on a deep hitch route. Went through his progressions quickly to hit Emeka Egbuka over the middle and stride. Carnell Tate dropped a perfect touchdown throw. That was so sad. I remember that was like a slant in the red zone, ended up just dropping it. I'm like, oh, broke my heart because I love Carnell Tate. Placement's has been pretty on point so far, doing a good job going through his progressions. Good restraint on not throwing a turnover-worthy play on a long developing play, end up scrambling for some good yards. Sniper shot over the middle. Bad choice on an option to keep it when the defender did not bite. Nice job checking it down when under pressure. Did not see Ibuka get open late and ended up throwing the ball away instead. Throwing with good precision overall, threaded the needle and went off the hands of Emeka Ibuka's went off the hands of Emeka Ibuka. Even when under pressure, he has solid poise. Great layer on a 10-yard out. Zoned in on Jeremiah Smith and did not see Emeka getting open over the middle and ended up taking a sack instead. Clean delivery rolling left. Interception forcing a deep hitch. I worry that he focuses too much on Jeremiah Smith on plays where he is a primary read because he knows how good Jeremiah is and will force it more than not when he is not will force it more than not. So when he is not the primary read, I see him go through progressions and make some awesome plays. Operating the quick offense, he overall operates a quick offense well. When lobbing at short range, he can be a bit elongated, leading to swatted balls. Under pressure while drifting away, ended up throwing a really solid place 20-yard out. Has the tendency to force deep right passes quite a few times. It was quite interesting. He would just end up throwing it, not really caring about the right side safety or defender, and ended up having some potential turnover-worthy plays there. A little too far in front on a skinny post, ended up having a big run on fourth to end the game off. So, I mean, I really do think Will Howard has the foundation to be a really solid spot starter, if not starter. Something I do want to note is that my quarterback tiering system basically is, if you're in the right system, in a good system for you, you can jump up a tier. So let's just say Max Brosmer goes to Los Angeles. I pretty much would give him a bump to where I think he could end up really working out as a QB2 there, with the upside for a perfect fit to be a QB1 in time. So just understand that if you are in the right spot, I do think it can end up working out very well for you. I would love to see him with Chip Kelly or potentially go to Pittsburgh and end up being a real quality, third round selection. So Will Howard, I have a lot of faith in the guy. I mean, I know a lot of people don't, but just watch him and you'll end up seeing this guy's actually a really solid player. Shedeur Sanders is next. Again, very, very close to very, very close in grade to Will Howard. And honestly, I could have boosted Will Howard even more, but Shedeur Sanders nonetheless is right here. Let's talk about his game versus Kansas State. Nice rhythm on a 5-yard out route. Good wheel throw. Forced a throw to Hunter deep, but not a bad ball at all. Good delivery on a zig route. Nice calm delivery while under pressure. Good pocket movement finally. Nice placement on a drag. He had good feel behind him of pressure and ended up maneuvering to throw a pretty solid throw, 15 yards downfield. Still a limited athlete. He dropped too deep, and that's a big issue with him. He just drops really, really, really far. And for having a bad offensive line, when you drop way too deep, to the point where it's 11 yards, you're 11 yards behind the line of scrimmage, it just gives defenders such an easier time getting to you that it makes your offensive line issues even worse. And I really do have an issue with that overall. But I digress. Good spot on a good spot throwing into a soft spot in zone. He has to watch out for holding the ball in one hand when he's being sacked. Decision making has been spot on. He ended up rolling into a sack, he sailed a ball for an interception. Really needs to not drop so deep. It's making it impossible for the offensive line to block properly. There we go. Overall has some big negatives, but this was a great showing versus closer to NFL talent. I think Shedeur makes the right decision and just sometimes makes the wrong throw. I was talking about that with Jalen Milroe as well. They don't make bad decisions. They know where to go, and just sometimes it just doesn't come to fruition. Shedeur sailed quite a few passes where you see the lowlights, but with Shedeur also you see a lot of these beautifully placed passes. I think that the hate for him, I'm perfectly in the middle. I have him right there as a late 1, early 2 grade. Same thing with Will Howard. He's right there in that mid 2 to early 2 range. For Shedeur, I think a late first is understandable. I think he's a high floor quarterback because decision making is super duper key. I think you can end up fine tuning the other things like the drop depth, and I think that continuing to train him how to handle pressure is going to be super duper key. But he has some reps where I really do like what he does. So As much negative as there is out there, again, there are people, including myself, like seeing earlier in the year some of the antics, some of the stuff on Twitter. I'm not a guy when I'm putting a multi-billion-dollar organization in the hands of somebody. I'm not a huge fan of drama online. So I'm going to drop him a little bit, but it wouldn't change his grade either way. So if you guys really don't factor that in at all, he still would end up being QB2 because I think QB1 is pretty obviously Cam Ward. Again, if you add those 3 points, it's 75.75. For Cam Ward, it's 76.5. It doesn't matter. If you really care about it, it's the same result as if you don't care about it. So keep that in mind as well. Let's talk about Cam Ward versus Iowa State. I do have my issues with him from time to time, but I think Cam Ward's high ceiling play is just incredible. I do think that it's worth taking the shot on. But nice placement, drifting left, all to the deep out to the left as well. So he was drifting left. There was a deep out that was developing, and he ended up throwing it perfectly. Perfect placement on a deep seam as well. Good layer into the end zone. Weirdly wide stance when he's trying to rip it down the seam, and it ended up overthrowing it. To be fair, the wide receiver did end up slowing down, but I do believe it still would have been an overthrow. Famous step-up throw to the perfect spot where Elijah Arroyo was running that cross. He stepped up and just like layered it perfectly. So, you guys have already seen that play a billion times over. He kept his eyes downfield while scrambling and found a big play. Beautiful teardrop on a deep shot. Underrated pocket movement to increase difficulty to get to him. Honestly, he's making great tight window throws, but the wide receiver is slowed down. So that's something I really found interesting. The wide receivers kept slowing down, almost as if they don't believe they're going to be targeted. And it's like, Cam does have that arm arrogance, and I don't think this is going to happen in the NFL. I think he actually is going to be more positively looked at by NFL teams. He has an issue with forcing deep right passes. It happened versus Virginia Tech as well. Could be a little better with placement on open throws. Placement, he had a nice mid-out route across the field. So there was a mid-out route, and he was actually on the other side, ended up making a real clean pass to it. Could be a little better with placement. Oh, yeah, I ended up already talking about that dumbass. But does a good job of keeping the red zone throws high and away from defenders. Cam Ward just has, for how old he is, he makes very stupid mistakes. But he also is a playmaker. That comes with it. Are you going to say Brett Favre is ass because he makes some horrible throws? No. So I think Cam Ward ended up having like a mid-season crisis when it ended up coming to Cal and Virginia Tech that I really, really didn't like. And he still was like QB2 for me when I had those games as the primary stuff of what I saw. But watching him grow and bounce back from that as the season progressed, like he had a hot start. That's great. Ended up having a cold middle, which is not great, but ended up rebounding, which I love even more. And yeah, the Georgia Tech game kind of bothers me, but I do think that, Iowa State, it's a good team with good defensive backs, still was able to play incredibly well versus them. I do love the fact that I saw on a relatively consistent basis, we're bringing a team in the Miami who hasn't really been a competitor to a legit almost ACC champion. So with Cam Ward, I think the potential is there, and I love it. Thank you so much for watching. Showing the love that you always do. Feel free to go watch my most recent video with RBT, and yeah, that's going to be a real fun one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Love you. See you on the far side. Peace.